What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. We are here with Mondays with Maximoff, and if you've listened to the first two episodes of the show and have been following us on social media, we are joined by Rob, who's been a great help with a lot of episodes here on Matt Goes to the Movies, and Harrison from the Basement Binge. We said last week that we were doing this show as a trifecta, which is really awesome. We have a lot of varying opinions, especially this week on this episode. So, Rob, Harrison, welcome, guys.
Thank you for having me again. I'm so excited for this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Folks, if you've been listening to the show, we're going to kind of like jumpstart here, and we're going to start with our 2-minute warning, which is for listeners of the show, or if you haven't listened, this is the part where each of us take 2 minutes. We're going to go over what we thought of the episode, but it's completely spoiler free for anybody who has not seen episode 3 of WandaVision. So listen to the 2-minute warning, hear what we think about this show, and then we're going to give you a second here to pause the episode and come back to us if you haven't seen this. But with that being said, Harrison, you're going to get us started here. What are your impressions of this episode of WandaVision?
Yeah, it's a very 2-minute warning, maybe a 1-minute warning, because there's not much to address. Similar to last episode where we talked about most of everything is hypothesizing and being excited about what might happen, even if we're 90% wrong. This episode is more of the same. It's following the typical thing that we got with the last few episodes where it's kind of the sitcom based off a TV show. This one's very 70s feeling. And then kind of snuck in there, especially towards the end, we get more of a reveal of more things to come. But it's such a small reveal that really it's just like, oh, here's something that you can chew on until next week. It's so minimal. So I really like it. It's interesting to think about. It's a hard episode to talk about because the sitcom 70s stuff, I appreciate how well they're making it. Like, it's not just like, oh, we've got to get through the sitcom stuff so we can tell the real thing. There is a bigger thing here, but when they are making that 70s TV show, they spend so much time making it lots of fun. And so it's fun enough to enjoy while you're waiting for it to get to the big part. And then, yeah, the last 10 minutes of the show, my heart was like going to beat out of my chest. It was intense, and it's sad because I'm having to just chew on the smallest of details, hoping for more to come. But yeah, it's fun. Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen are just as great, and they're becoming the reason that I love this the most. They're just so much fun. So yeah.
Yeah, Rob, I'm going to shoot in here and go next because kind of like Harrison said, my 2-minute warning is probably 1 minute because, similar to you've probably any listeners, and I'm sure you two have heard too, a bad ending can ruin a really great movie, and vice versa. This show's ending for me really kind of catapulted this episode a lot higher than what I was initially thinking. And it really is the last 10 minutes where, Harrison, you alluded to it. I got kind of nervous the last 10 minutes of this episode because of a certain character that really almost seemed to change from one scene to another, and it was a little intimidating. And obviously we'll go into that during spoilers, what I mean by that, but there's not a lot to talk about in this episode minus little tidbits and what could be a theory. It looks like that's going to change very quickly with the next episode, but I did enjoy this episode, but I think it would be another one where it might be difficult to get through on a rewatch. So that's my take on this episode. Rob, what about you? Close this out for us.
Yeah, so without really getting too far into spoilers, there's not a lot here that you can really go into, and yeah, I think we're probably going to spend the bulk of the rest of this show kind of trying to extract nuggets of information or possible foreshadowing of what we expect to happen over the next several weeks. Much in the same way, week one was very Dick Van Dyke kind of influence, and episode 2 was very much Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. This week we get more of a Partridge Family and Brady Bunch. I mean, what I love is I love the care and attention that they make to setting the scene and really making you feel like you're watching a piece of television from that era. And it really starts with the music, the way the instruments they choose, the style of music they're going with, just everything about how they're presenting these is it's really impressive to go back and listen to, especially if you have, like we've talked about in the past, if you've seen any of these old shows that are acting as the inspiration for each decade that they're going through. They're lovingly crafted, I guess, as far as setting the scene. So I really do enjoy that. This week was a low point for me. I guess what I would say of my subscription of Disney Plus so far, of everything that we've gotten for original content. Just like I've talked about before, sat down with the family, watched it on Friday night. Was kind of bored through part of it, to be honest. The ending definitely got my attention again. On the rewatch, I wasn't really looking forward the rest of this weekend. I just was not like, okay, like with Mandalorian, I was just as excited for my rewatch as I was the initial viewing of the episode. I just, I'll get to it when I get to it was kind of my thought. And, on that rewatch, knowing what the last 10 minutes were like, I enjoyed my rewatch more than I thought I would, but I don't know that I ever need to watch this episode ever again, unless I'm doing a run through for some reason, or unless there is something insane that happens throughout this show that I have to go back and see how those pieces fell together and how did we miss these obvious cues and things like that. There's a lot of things about this that just didn't work for me that I'll get into more when we get past the 2-minute warning.
All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to go here. So, listeners, if you have not seen episode 3 of WandaVision, or you do not care about spoilers, obviously, if you don't want to hear spoilers, this is a part where you're going to pause this episode, go watch it on your own, and then come back to us. But here we go. We're going to get into spoilers and theories and everything else that we can. So, obviously, guys, the real meat of this episode is the fact that Wanda's pregnant, and it's going to come much quicker than what she and Vision think it's going to. It's rapidly approaching at a comedic level, so to speak, with things coming into reality, which Harrison, I want to pose this first question to you, because a lot of this is based on theories and everything like that, but a lot of these things when Wanda's pregnant and getting things together because they're getting the nursery ready come to life. And one of my questions for you is, what do you think about the butterfly scene? Because I have my opinion on that. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts right off the bat on the butterflies coming to life.
I think that it was, I think, let me gather my thoughts here. I think it was a great example of what is happening in the bigger picture. Clearly, Wanda has incredible powers that she doesn't even know the extent of. She gets butterflies in her stomach, and suddenly the butterflies in the room come to life. And she's so happy with it and just go with it. It's the best thing ever. And so I think that this has to do with my theory. I think that the reality that they're in, the fact that she has kids, is continually at the result of her subconscious whims. And she is so excited about it that she just follows along with it and tries to control everything. But I think there's a lot of things that are also out of her control because she is so unfamiliar with what she can do. And so a lot of things are happening to her without her intentionally doing it.
Yeah. I think this episode really puts into perspective, and obviously the ending, which we'll get into later, how out of control a lot of things are, and how it could come crumbling really quickly. But one interesting thing, and Rob, I'll let you branch off of this, the butterflies actually make an appearance too in Doctor Strange when he's actually talking with the Ancient One. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And again, maybe it means nothing, but when she was taking him through dimensions and he sees a butterfly and she says, well, what is real here. And with everything that we've heard about Doctor Strange and the multiverse of madness, again, I feel like sometimes Marvel is not doing anything by coincidence. So I feel like all of these little things are obviously just connected. And Rob, I think that's maybe where rewatches, kind of like you alluded to, might come into play, because by the time this is all over, we might see things that were like, holy cow, I did not realize that was a setup for this, or there's these little clues right in front of us that seemed like nothing, that could mean something. And again, literally what I'm saying could absolutely mean nothing. But I don't think everything is going to just be, oh no, had nothing on the story.
So the one that really jumped out to me, and it seemed weird initially on my rewatch, why exactly was Herb cutting concrete with a hedge trimmer? Like, what exactly was he doing there? You know, like, it didn't make any sense from just like a hey neighbor kind of perspective. Like, he was doing something. And it didn't line up with anything that we would associate with, like, yeah, okay, he just slipped and his hedge trimmer just can now cut through stone block apparently. So that was kind of weird to me, and it was even weirder on my rewatch because when Vision comes outside later in the episode, and Agnes is there, and he's having the conversation with her, or she's having the conversation with Herb. They're talking about something, and they get kind of weird, and they're talking about Geraldine being inside and she doesn't have a home and all these things. It kind of makes you wonder, are they all sword operatives? Are they trapped there too? And Geraldine is the one who's shown up and be like, okay, everybody, like, I'm going to get us out of this. I need you to all play along. Like, I'm here to help. Like, it really makes you wonder, like, was he doing something to try to set up, a way for her to get in, or to try to cut into that reality. Again, a lot of this could mean absolutely nothing, but it seemed so strange what he was doing. I refuse to believe that part was nothing. What did you think?
Yeah, just the way that it transfers to, hey, what are you doing there? And he just, oh, look at that. Again, it seems like these characters are breaking out of reality, especially the way that they weaved in and out of, oh, never mind, don't say anything. Okay, well, bye, neighbor. Or also, too, there's one scene, Harrison, I'll get your thoughts on this, where he goes to get the doctor. And again, this is kind of jumping throughout the episode, but when he runs to get the doctor, which again is a little bit of a talking point to me, the doctor says to him, hard place to escape from. That, again, just doesn't seem like a throwaway line. It seemed very pointed and very meaningful. Harrison, you did a really good thing on your Mandalorian episodes where you had your Harrison's hypothesis, and I liked it. Obviously, we kind of joked and talked about how some of them just didn't come true, but what are you thinking with these things?
Yeah, I'm glad that you like the hypothesis with Harrison. Hypotheses are tons of fun for me with these things. So I've been thinking about it a ton, and both of those moments you mentioned really, I think, are really important, like both of you guys said. But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I really think that Agnes, who's played by Catherine Hahn, is Agatha Harkness, or some version of that from the comics, and Herb, whoever he is in some way, whether he's a Swords agent or somebody else or somebody created by Wanda, he's under the control of Wanda. So when Wanda's in this horribly stressful situation where she's going into labor and all this chaos is happening around him, she doesn't have the ability to control him to trim his bushes properly. And so he's kind of slipping on his own, and he's not understanding it. And because her grip on that reality is loosening. And we see that throughout this episode as butterflies are coming to life, a bird is coming to life, it's raining inside, all of these things. I think it's just showing that Wanda, because of the stressful month season, is losing her grip on reality. But Agnes, and I think the same thing goes with the Doctor. That they're trapped in there. Wanda's brought them in there somehow, and every once in a while we just see slips of Wanda's control over that reality. But I think Agnes, are you guys familiar with her relationship with Wanda in the comics at all?
Here and there, it's something that I've started to actually read up on, because there definitely seems to be, at least for me, from things that I've read, they seem to be kind of, not cherry picking the right word, but there definitely seem to be taking bits and pieces from stories and combining them into this version of WandaVision from stories that they've done in the comics.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, of course, Matt and Rob, but also any listeners. So I'll keep it really brief, because Wanda has had so many rewrites through comics, and so many times has had, reality altering powers, House of M being the most famous one. But in a lot of those iterations, Agatha Harkness is a witch. She has similar powers to Wanda, and she actually trains Wanda Maximoff and helps her develop the powers to have children. And later, it doesn't go so great. She turns out to be a lot more evil than good, and kind of turns on Wanda. So I think that something's going on there. I really, especially from the first few episodes, think Agnes, is very interested in having Wanda create children. In the first episode, she's saying, what about seduction techniques? And then the second episode is all about for the children. I mean, that's the most on-the-nose thing ever. And then the third episode, she's making sure that the delivery and the birth is going well, and that it's being controlled. So I think that everybody is under their control, and Agnes is someone who's there consciously. She's aware of what's going on, and she's got some type of control over everything. I don't know. It's super interesting. And it also kind of adds some idea that I think that Geraldine was that SHIELD agent that flew in on the helicopter, and that's why she doesn't have a home. So I don't know, but the thing is, I'm just chewing up these pieces into way more than they mean, and I'm probably going to be 90% wrong, like I was with Mandalorian. But it's fun to think about, and I think that's why.
Go ahead, Fish.
Oh, I was just saying, I think that's why this episode was so fun for me, is because it just generates ideas. This episode, I'm sure would be boring on a rewatch, and in fact, I didn't rewatch it because I wasn't excited about it. But what I'm excited about is what it makes me think is coming.
It definitely seems, if you want to watch these through the lens that Catherine Hahn's character Agnes is fully aware of what's going on and is playing her part within it, you could definitely make the case that is happening. It does seem like she might be aware that this is not a real reality, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but none of this really makes any sense. When you really get right down to it, it's an android, it's a woman with magic powers, none of it's real. So just go with it. But it kind of seems, like she's kind of playing a part. She's kind of poking things along a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if we get to the end of this and find out she's got a lot more control or a lot more awareness of the actual thing. I'm going to just go ahead and throw out my theory that on my rewatch of this, one of the things I'm wondering, and it really, in the last 10 minutes is where this crystallized for me. I'm wondering if Wanda is actually the villain of this series. If she's the one that's creating the situation, she's controlling the situation, and these people are trapped because of her, because she refuses to deal with what she's got in any other way. And ultimately, she is the antagonist of this series. That and every time somebody tries to break out of it or fight back from it, she says, nope, we're not having it, and pulls it away. We saw it with the beekeeper. She just said, nope, and pulled it away. We saw when Mr. Hart was choking in the first episode and it looked like he was going to have an issue. She just said, that's upsetting my ideal vision of what I want in my life. So Vision save him, and then boom, they're right back to the sitcom. Vision starts to ask questions about how is this real? How is this happening? And we get a very unsettling sort of like blip in it. The first time I watched it, I went, did my internet connection go out? Like, what happened? And I don't know if everybody else kind of had that same reaction. Yeah, and that's how it was presented. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait, did this just rewind backwards? Like, how did that happen? And it was so disconcerting that even on a rewatch, when I've already seen that just a few days ago, I actually momentarily thought the same thing twice. And it's clearly her controlling it. It's clearly her doing. And then you get to that line towards the end where she says Geraldine had to rush home. And the way she says it is so skin crawling and just sinister is the only way to really phrase it. That's my theory right now. That's how I'm viewing this.
Yeah, I want to jump in there because in the beginning, that's what I was alluding to is that last segment where she's really pressing her. Why did you say all like because we get Ultron's name dropped in this, and we get the fact that she now has finally mentioned that she had a brother. And that's when I said, like, I got nervous because one, her accent comes back. And again, I don't think that can be just a throwaway. I think it's been very specific that she hasn't had the accent and all of a sudden she's got it back. But the way that she says to Vision too, like you said, Rob, oh, she had to go home or she had to run, however the exact line is said. It really, it's very villain-like. And it makes you think that, yeah, she is in control of this. And maybe that's why she's being monitored, because it looks clearly like at the end of this episode, obviously we think this is a, fragmented and made up reality. But it's almost crystal clear that Westview is not a real place based on the fact that it literally looks like they're outside of a dome when this episode ends. It really looks like there's something that they're trying to, penetrate, so to speak, and figure out a way to, how do we get in there? So I definitely think she could be the real villain of this series and a real branching character throughout some of these movies that are coming up. And really, the multiverse of madness could be a direct relation to the fact that she is so hell-bent, so to speak, on keeping this reality intact that she really fragments a lot of things elsewhere. Harrison, what are your, where are you on this?
Oh, 100% agree with both of you guys. I think that she is going to be the antagonist of her own show and will lead into being the antagonist of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I totally agree with you guys. I'm like leaning into this way too much. Like I mentioned this last episode on IMDb, Elizabeth Olsen is credited as Wanda Maximoff up until episode 3. And then in episode 4 through the end of that season, she's Wanda Maximoff and Scarlet Witch. She's credited as both. Also in episode 4, Teyana Paris, who plays Geraldine, is no longer credited as Geraldine, is credited as Monica. So I'm super excited for episode 4. But nonetheless, I think that never before, at least in my memory, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, in the MCU has Wanda Maximoff been referred to as Scarlet Witch. She's always Wanda. I don't think she's ever been referred to as Scarlet Witch. My memory could be failing me.
No, I don't. Rob, I do not remember a single time that she has been mentioned as the Scarlet Witch.
Not only do I not believe she's ever been mentioned as Scarlet Witch, but I'm pretty sure they've never actually called Quicksilver, at least not in the MCU, because, and from my memory of it, it was always sort of passed off as, well, we don't entirely have the rights to it, which is sometimes where you see the origin of their powers kind of messed with in the comics so that Marvel could retain their film rights before they bought out Fox and got all of their mutants back. But I believe you're right. And that's now I'm starting to think, well, that's really interesting. Like that can't mean nothing.
Yeah, and I think that back to my theory about Agnes being Agatha Harkness, who is a witch, I think that that's kind of the turning point where Wanda Maximoff becomes Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch has always kind of just been like a evil name to me. Even in the comics, I've always kind of felt like that's a horrible name for a hero. It's kind of evil. And I think that, just kind of playing off my own ideas here, but I think that there is a difference between Wanda Maximoff and Scarlet Witch. And I think Scarlet Witch, from this training in some way that I'm believing she's getting from Agnes, is going to be the villain and continue to do so into Multiverse of Madness. Because even in the comics, Doctor Strange had a very interesting relationship with Wanda and was kind of the one who helped her deal with her grief and put reality back to normal. But yeah, I think that she's definitely going to be the villain. She's scary too. Elizabeth Olsen, when she said that last line, like Geraldine had to run home or whatever, I was like, you terrify me. And I think it's just great. I'm here for it. I'm so excited to see the double sides of it. And I'm really interested, just to present one other idea, is how much is Vision going to be, questioning things? How much more is he? Because he always starts to question things and then she tightens her grip on him and does some type of reset or thing. I'm curious as it expands and more things have to be under her control and she's trying to maintain this reality. I think Vision's going to question things more and more and more. And I'm really, really excited.
Yeah. Like you said, too, where people are credited for certain episodes as one character and another episode they're not. I think I'll get into that in 1 second, but do we think Vision is all the way dead, or do you guys think maybe there is some sort of Ultron-like storyline here where maybe he's, uploaded, so to speak, and he's obviously a physical projection for her, but obviously in these movies, nobody's ever really dead if they don't want them to be. But do you think he's only a fragment of her, her reality that she wants to create? Or is there some part of Vision that's actually still around and that's why he's able to understand that something's not right here and question it?
My kind of thinking on that is based on the simple fact that we see shots of Vision by himself. So if this was only her reality, we wouldn't see things going on outside of Wanda in frame. We wouldn't have other characters interacting with one another outside of just her. We've really only seen, and I can't think of a scene that has neither Wanda or Vision in it, which leads me to believe it's very possible that Vision is not just in this reality that she's created. Very likely, I can't believe that. I don't necessarily think right now that he's just created by her. There's maybe a seed that she sort of grew this version of him out of. And that could be, an upload of his AI consciousness. That could be a reboot of him altogether. It could be an experiment where they were trying to restore Vision back to himself, which there was an Easter egg that we didn't talk about from episode 1. If you actually look at the date that was on the calendar, it was, I think, August 23rd, which is the 23rd day of the 8th month, which corresponds to an issue of Avengers 238, where they are basically bringing Vision back to life and rebooting him in some way. If you want to chase the rabbit far enough down the hole, it might mean nothing, but they chose that date, and that issue of the comics does correspond to something. So, my guess right now is that while Vision may not be fully back and operational, there's at least a piece of him. There's a fragment of his consciousness or his AI persona that is still left that is somehow involved.
Yeah. Harrison, any thoughts?
I'm with you there. I think I think he's got some type of sentient being in some way. There's also like a split-second shot in the trailer where I can't remember, I'd have to rewatch this trailer, where Wanda's doing something with the Mind Stone. And this is the part where my memory's fuzzy. It's either that she's doing something with the Mind Stone and then it explodes and there like shatters of yellow stone fly everywhere, or the other way around where she's bringing those pieces back together. I don't remember. But either way, it's clearly the Mind Stone that she's manipulating. And so I think that he's there. I think that he's going to be back in the MCU in some extent. But that's also just kind of my hope that Paul Bettany stays around, because I'm like really starting to like him in this season or this series. But yeah, whether he stays in the MCU or not, I think that he is existing in his own way somehow.
Yeah. Also, too, it's one thing here that I don't know. I don't think it can be a coincidence, but we get another TV commercial, and it's for Hydra Soak Luxury Bath Soap, which is very, very Tesseract-like in its design.
Oh, whoa.
It's blue, first of all, and it's a cube. So I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but it's very Tesseract-like to me. But once again, it's the same two actors in the ad. It's the same two people playing the same two characters. And a lot of theories are saying that that's Wanda's memories of her parents, which again could be really just devastating when she finds out that all of these things aren't real, and someone really kind of like breaks her from this reality of this isn't right, you're whatever, not healthy, however you want to say it. None of this is real, and you kind of need to understand what's happening and move on. She doesn't seem like she's going to take that very well, as we saw in the last part of this episode. And I still have a theory now that Pietro was brought up, that she might really snap here if we do see Evan Peters as a version of Quicksilver, and they try to convince her that maybe that's her brother, or for whatever reason she tries to bring him back because of this episode, and that's who shows up. I still think that could be something, because they're very tight-lipped on what he's doing, and he doesn't have a character credit anywhere that tells us who he's supposed to be playing.
Which is really interesting, because it wasn't until episode 3 of this show that anybody had even referenced Pietro, Quicksilver, any of it. The fact that she had a brother, unless there's something in Infinity War that I'm not remembering. When you think about, first of all, how terrible Age of Ultron was as a movie, but then so don't necessarily go back to it if you don't have to, because it's not any fun. But he had literally the worst death in all of the MCU. A guy that can move faster than you can even think, and somehow he gets shot and decides that instead of just picking the bullets out of midair and moving them, he's just going to use himself as a human shield. Just the stupidest death, just terribly written. It really meant nothing. And honestly, like when he died, I was just like, oh well, I guess he won't be in future movies. That was literally my reaction. I didn't really feel anything about it. I didn't think they had sort of redeemed the character enough to make us actually care that much about him. I have a lot of problems with Age of Ultron, but we'll save those for the podcast we did on it, Matt. But it's interesting, is this is the first time that he's even mentioned. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, wow, like, did they just really throw that away and now are finally bringing it back? It's, I'll be very curious to see what happens. Yeah, I would love to see it somehow work in this other actor that also plays the same character. How would they make that work and not have it feel cheap, though? That's been throughout all of the reacquisition of those characters. And okay, how are we going to bring the X-Men in? How are we going to incorporate this? How do you think they're going to do that? Just like a goofy alternate universe. Okay, we're merged now, guys. Like, that was always my fear. And I never believed that they would actually do this, because these are smart filmmakers. They're great storytellers. I refuse to believe they would just cheap out and do something so lame as that. But How is that actually going to work? It'll be interesting.
Yeah, Harrison, any thoughts, man?
Man, if you're right about that being her memory of her parents, that's horrible. That's so sad. And I think you're right. I really do. There's no credit. I'm cheating the system here and looking behind the curtain a little bit. There's no credit of them after this episode, but I think that whether that means something or not, my headcanon is that that's her memory of her parents, and that makes it way sadder. But another thing about that whatever it's called, the the soap bath or whatever it was called, bubble bath. It kind of had the idea of like escaping the difficulties of your reality. You know, it had like a mom who was upset with her children, and like it was all too much for her to handle. So go take a bath. And I think that that's again really leading into the mentality of Wanda, which is just so intriguing. But I'm also curious. I forgot Darcy is showing up in this series. What the heck is she gonna do? And where the heck has she been for the last forever?
That is, yeah, that's totally true. I haven't even, I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it. And yeah, like why, of all characters, why would she be a part of this show? Certainly some theories about Evan Peters would make sense as to why he would be a part of it. But why that character? She's had really nothing to do with any of this. Anything to do with Wanda, anything to do with Vision. So why is she there? What would her point be in being in this show? So that's a really good point. And when does she show
up? She shows up next episode for the rest of the season. I think that her character or Darcy and Jimmy Woo, I'm really thinking that they're both some type of sword agent. I think they both are in some way. So,
but I don't remember Darcy really being much more than just kind of Natalie Portman's sidekick. You know, like was she really that sciencey? I don't really remember her doing overly sciencey things. Yeah, I don't remember her doing much more. Yeah, like carry this, set this up, like I didn't really remember her being that involved. So it makes you wonder, like, is it just because she was like 3 degrees away from Thor that they said, yeah, you can be in sword?
This is my one theory that I just literally point off the top of my head right now, is I think that she experienced something with Infinity War and Endgame. Because I have to keep reminding myself, like, when Thanos snapped his fingers, this Jimmy Woo dude and all these other characters were involved in that. Like, that was the entire universe that was affected by that, and not just the heroes we see in Endgame. And I have to keep reminding myself of that, because I'm like, Jimmy Woo, why is he there? He's Ant-Man's dude, who wants, and so I think that there's something that happened with Infinity War and Endgame that really, I think, catapulted Sword into what it is now. Of course, Nick Fury working with the Skrulls, and that, I think the combination of that and Infinity War to launch Sword, and I'm just thinking that's an easy way to just kind of like shoehorn her in. But I hope whatever happens, I hope it's not shoehorning. I hope that is good writing.
Yeah, that is, I think obviously it's clear based on, and you can read on, like Harrison said, if you pull back the curtain a little bit and cheat, it's definitely about to shift tones with episode 4. The sitcom route is over for this show, and there's only, guys, correct me here, so there's 9 episodes total, right? It was originally supposed to be 8, and then it was 9, or is it still an 8-episode show?
It's 9.
Okay, so
according to IMDb.
Yeah, we definitely are going in a different direction here, it looks like, for the end of this show. And even Paul Bettany has said this show ends with a bang. Like, it definitely will catch you off guard. It doesn't just kind of like, even though it goes into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, he said this show ends and you're going to feel it. It's going to be an ending that you're like, wow. So they're not just treating this as a show, so to speak. Like, this is supposedly going to be a huge event that ends this series. And, according to everything else, like, we've already heard that Loki is going to be 2 seasons. We've already heard that Falcon and the Winter Soldier was going to be 2 seasons. They've made it very clear, and things could change, but this is a one-off. This is one time. This leads basically into almost everything, it seems like. Like, this is the catalyst for the next phase of the MCU, which is very interesting.
Because we're going to have to wait forever for it. I mean, we don't even really know when Black Widow is going to be released, let alone Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I mean, imagine that when this is done, there's some crazy ending, like Infinity War level crazy, where half the universe is snapped and you have to wait like that ungodly amount of time between the end of Infinity War and when you can go see Endgame. Like, it'll almost be that kind of period of time. If something crazy happens that we don't really get a resolution to until Doctor Strange, that's going to be infuriating.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think they're just going to say, like, Black Widow's coming out 2028, and then we'll just be surprised when it's just, like, released. I get
I
it.
don't think it's going to happen, but I keep hearing more and more people are saying, just put it on Disney Plus already. Just give it to us as a special pay-per-view kind of event like they did with Mulan. There has to be a reason, and I don't want to try to get us too far off topic, but there has got to be a reason why Disney is holding on to it for a theatrical release, where Warner Brothers put all of their stuff on HBO Max with Wonder Woman and things like that. They have to believe this thing is a blockbuster that's going to make them billions.
Yeah, I can't believe they're struggling for money, and they're like, geez, we can't afford to not have this be in theaters. It is rather odd that they're being so, I guess, stubborn is the word I'll use, with releasing that and just continuing to delay it. Because as we know, it's not production wise, because it's finished. It's not like they can't film it because of COVID and everything else that's going on. It's been filmed. It's ready to go. And who knows, maybe with some of these other delays, maybe they finally say, yeah, we do need to, give some sort of some sort of movie release, and we'll do that on Disney Plus. But, Harrison, what is, I think we're at the point where it's, again, we've basically just rated this episode and talked about this episode based on theories. But where do you think episode 4 goes? If you had to take a guess for episode 4, where does it go? Where does it go for you?
Yeah, so episode 3 ends with Geraldine, who we know as Monica Rambeau, getting launched back into reality. And I think the episode's going to start with an attempt at the sitcom. Wanda is in her reality still. Just because one person got launched to the moon doesn't mean that her reality stops existing. So I think that it's going to start with kind of a sitcom vibe in some ways. And she's going to try and continue to maintain this sitcom with Vision and their 2 kids, Billy and Tommy, or whatever their names are. And then we're going to jump to Sword. And then that's going to kind of just lead into like Sword trying to infiltrate the reality and her trying to keep Sword out. And then it's going to be the start of the escalation that causes all sorts of chaos. That's what I think.
Rob, what's your thought? Where do you think episode 4 is going?
I think episode 4, you'll probably see it jump forward to the 80s, and you'll see inspirations taken from, the big sitcoms there. I'm expecting at least something more than 45 seconds in the real world. I'm expecting we'll see a little bit more. We've seen a clip from trailers of the 2 of them agreeing that something is wrong and this is our home and we're going to fight for it. So we've seen that in some of the trailers leading into this. And that could have been any number of different things, but I think I'm with Harrison in that there is going to be an incursion on the part of Sword trying to get into whatever this pocket reality is, trying to break in, trying to get whoever's trapped in there out and get Wanda into a state where she's not a threat to herself, to the people trapped in there, or for all we know, at all of reality. I mean, yeah, to go back to something that we had talked about before, all of these people were either snapped or were affected by the snap. And certainly anything that feels like, once that happens, you think back to even something that happened in our own lifetimes, like the attacks on 9/11. It's happened once. What else could happen? And you think about just the way that air travel changed as soon as that was done. Imagine how the world would change if half of all sentient life was destroyed. What precautions would be put in place? Like, stuff would be put in place that would make the Patriot Act look like nothing. Like it would make it look like the rules of order of a local student council. Like there would be crazy stuff put in place to make sure nothing like that could ever happen, and any threats to humanity, to Earth, to reality, would be dealt with very seriously, and taken seriously. So you have to wonder, is that what they're viewing this as? I sort of expect us, I hope we see more of the real world, of actual reality. I found myself, and part of the reason I really didn't get into this episode as much as I did other things, I guess for me it's a lot like Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, where they're yelling, "Get on with it!" like at the top of their lungs. Like we've seen 3 episodes now where Wanda, okay, we get it, she's losing her mind. Okay, she's had trauma. We get it. What's actually happening? Like, show us what's going on. There's no payoff. It's just continuing to be half hour after half hour of her not accepting that this trauma is real. She's created this other world for herself, and she's not letting anything threaten it. And we've seen 3 episodes of it now without there really being, with the exception of the last 10 minutes maybe, any payoff of what's really going on. And that's why, like I said, this was not something I was really looking forward to rewatching like I was hoping to.
If it's okay if I cut in super quick, Rob said something that reminded me of something I read this past week. So I didn't realize this until I did some research, and I'm sorry to cut in, Matt, but in the comics, so the agency of SWORD stands for Sentient World Observation Response Department, which is largely responsible for being a shield in space. So SWORD is really linked to like the Fantastic Four. It's things that are happening out in the cosmos, out in space, and SWORD is the defense against that. It's defending the world. But in the MCU, SWORD stands for Sentient Weapon Observation Response Department. And I think that it's, like Rob just pointed out, a reaction to a catastrophic weapon that Thanos used. And so now there's this huge push to have a observation response team to sentient weapons that can be used on a colossal scale, like Thanos' snap. And so this is just kind of my theory. I think that at first they thought that some weapon was doing this to Wanda. They trusted Wanda as their friend and their ally, and someone was doing it to Wanda. That's why even Jimmy Woo said, "Who's doing this to you?" And I think Monica, or Geraldine, whoever you want to call her, getting launched out and having that experience is going to help them realize that Wanda is the weapon, and that's going to launch the attack, and then chaos. So I think that's what's going to happen, which is really interesting, because I think, Rob, your description of it was like spot on with what you pointed out about our own response to 9/11 and that type of things. And that makes, like, I don't know, it makes me trust in my own theories more, which is bad because I'm probably going to be disappointed when it's not true. But it's interesting how well it connects.
Okay, so here's my last question I'm going to pose to both of you, and this might be something that we might have to address in another episode, but one part of the comic books with Wanda and Vision having kids, and we know obviously Marvel with the shows and the movies, Eternals, and all of these things that they're doing, they're not outside the realm of going completely just off the rails with characters. And one of them, and there's a couple of lines in earlier episodes that make me think maybe this could be it, but what is the possibility that we are getting the actual devil in the Marvel universe and Mephisto as a character? Because there's some lines that Agnes uses that could hint that there's another force at play here, trapping Wanda in this reality. Guys, have you thought or read anything about that?
So I have seen some things around Mephisto's, the devil in the details. I think there was a line in one of the first 2 episodes about that, and him being involved with with her ability to have the twins, who Billy, maybe jumping into Easter eggs a little bit early, but Billy and Tommy are the names that they decide on, and those are Wanda's real children, who eventually go on to become the characters Wiccan and Speed. Wiccan has been certainly more involved recently, I think, you've certainly seen him. And I'm going to say I kind of expect that to become something, as it seems like Marvel and Disney as a whole wants to get away from all of their, main characters as straight white men. Wiccan is gay and gets married in the comics. I kind of feel like they want to see more of that. So I kind of expect the twins to grow up and become characters in the MCU.
Yeah, Harrison, I think you had something that you were adding to that.
Oh yeah, I've read some things about it, and I don't know. This is what I'm trying to say this the right way. I have so many thoughts spinning in my head right now. If he is introduced, if the devil, whatever his name is, I always forget, is going to be involved in the MCU, it's going to be hinted at. I don't think it's going to be like a big reveal yet. I think that would take away from letting Wanda be the villain, which maybe I'm leaning into that idea too much. Mm-hmm. But I could definitely see it as a possibility, and maybe he's like the big baddie of Phase 4 or the next saga or whatever they're going to call it. But I don't. If he is involved, I don't think it's going to be. It's going to be like Avengers post-credit scene where we kind of saw like the smile of Thanos type thing. Like it's just going to be like an acknowledgement of his existence, but not a big reveal. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe he gets peppered in, so to speak, sprinkled in. Because Rob, you're right. When they say the devil's in the details, it's actually Agnes jokes back and says that's not the only place he is, and that maybe they're saying, she keeps referring to a husband, but we don't see him, and maybe this husband is him. Again, a lot of this is theories and reaching, but he does have a connection to Doctor Strange, and he has a connection to Peter Parker. And Doctor Strange obviously is going to be a mentor to Peter in Spider-Man 3. So he could be a large part of a connective tissue, but again, he might just be like peppered in throughout and not just like this huge reveal of, oh, you're actually like, we're going to see somebody fighting the devil, so to speak. Because maybe he gets hinted at, and who knows, maybe this Ghost Rider show that they're talking about that's the first villain that Ghost Rider encounters. But there's, again, Harrison, you said this, and this is where you said a lot of your excitement comes from. These episodes so far, the excitement is literally just from the 100 different things that you can think of that might be possible. And again, everything that we've talked about, none of this could be, by the time we get to the end of it, everything we've said could literally just be for naught, so to speak. But it sure is fun along the way.
Yeah, I will say, if next week's episode the three of us get together and like, well, we just have a bunch of theories, I'm going to be really irritated. Like, I don't get me wrong, I love theorizing and hypothesizing, but there's a point where it's like too much, and then the payoff is rushed because you're trying to pay off everything that you spent way too long setting up. And I think that we're at a good point where it'd be it'd be good to have it start to pay off. And I think it will. I totally trust that, but we'll see.
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, so you think about something we had talked about last week. Marvel dropped 2 episodes to start this series off. We got episodes 1 and 2 back to back last Friday. They gave us episode 3 here. I'm kind of, like I mentioned before, I'm kind of over like what we're seeing. I kind of want to see the payoff of it. Harrison, you had kind of said, if we get to next week and we're still just hypothesizing, you're going to be pretty annoyed. Well, so am I. And I kind of think now that knowing how the first 3 episodes of this show start, if we were just reviewing episode 2 tonight, and not getting a chance to, if we're doing 3 weeks of this instead of 2 weeks, I think the luster might be off this. The excitement from a lot of people might be off this. They may not have as much of an audience by the time they finally get around to really hitting us with something big. Like I said, it's very much that Monty Python scene for me. Just get on with it. Like let's see what's happening now.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you guys. I think they've had enough time here to let us know exactly what's going on, so to speak. Obviously, we're still, grabbing at straws for a lot of things, but we know that this isn't real. You've set up your world, so to speak, and now, it does seem like this episode is, where everything's going to change. More so the next episode is where we start to get the tone shift for it. But yeah, I think we need something more concrete in this next episode to keep the goodwill, so to speak, for this show going. And we're not on episode 5 going, well, maybe we know what's going on. Because at this point, I think we definitely need something to go off of, and not just theories. I still think you can come up with a lot of them, but I think the story needs to be painted in a much clearer picture here at the end of episode 4. And I do think we're getting that. So I'm not too worried, but we'll definitely see when we're back next week what we're going to be saying here about this show in general, because I think it's a real crucial episode. But Harrison, I'm going to let you go first here. We're at the point where let's overall rate this episode, and out of 5, what would you give this? What is your rating?
I'd probably give it 3.5 reels. Is that what we're giving it? Reels? 3.5 reels out of 5. Because it's thinking of the right words here. It's too much of the same thing. I love the sitcom stuff, but I've had enough already. And so it really kind of takes the episode down, and I probably would have only given it like 1.5 stars or 2 for the fun things, like just being fun as a sitcom. But I'm not watching WandaVision because I want to watch a sitcom. I want the multiverse, so to speak. But those last 10 minutes crank it up so much. It's like the best 10 minutes I've ever watched of anything. And that really takes it up a lot. So it's an interesting tone where I'm kind of like, come on, let's go. I mean, but also enjoying the slow, fun, lighthearted details of it, but also like just having a gas, to quote whatever her name is, I already forgot, Agnes, at those last 10 minutes. So it's a weird combo.
Yeah, Rob, what are your thoughts? What would you give this episode?
So I'm going 2.5. And as I was thinking about over this weekend, what I just wasn't enjoying about what we got. And I'm going to apologize to Harrison and the audience for a second, because what I'm about to say might trigger Matt a little bit. So just warning in advance. I didn't particularly care for Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. I was kind of bored by it. And it was a slow, you're watching this guy just slowly over the course of a feature film just get the crap beat out of him, just go a little crazier. And ultimately it's not until the tail end of the movie that you really get anything out of it. I went into that wanting to see him do Joker stuff, not just be a sad kind of, mentally challenged person who needed real help and was in a terrible situation and was just getting the crap kicked out of him, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And I didn't find it entertaining. And I'm kind of at a similar place with WandaVision. It's like, okay, we get it. She's very mentally damaged. She's had a ton of terrible things happen in her life, and it continues to get worse for her. And she's trying to escape. She's trying to live in that happy place. And every time somebody breaches her reality, she kicks them out, and she spins the decade forward 10 years and is back in that happy place and is living her ideal world. And we're still just not getting paid off on it. That's just the comparison that I just kept coming up with. Was that's sort of the same reason I just didn't get into Joker, which, by the way, Matt saw in theaters no less than 5 times. So I'm going to let him completely tear me apart for not liking Joker. But 2.5 reels is my review, is my rating of this episode.
Okay, well, as soon as I get done with my review of this, Rob, I am outside your door with water balloons and nunchucks ready to fight you for that comment about Joker. But I digress. No, Harrison, I would agree with your rating. I would say that's where it is for me, just because honestly, the last 10 minutes of this it really was an episode that I was kind of just casually watching. I wasn't really intent on it during my sit down, but that last 10 minutes, similar to if you have a dog and you grab your keys for the car, your dog perks up because they think they're going for a car ride. That was kind of me on the couch, like, oh geez, what's happening here? And it really just kind of propelled this episode, like I said in the beginning. So I would give it 3.5 out of 5 reels. And it's one of those episodes, though, like you said, I think unless we get something towards the end of the season where it's just like, wow, there were all these little tiny details that I did not notice. These first 3 episodes, I don't see a reason to really ever go back and watch this show again unless there's a lot of we'll steal that line again, devil in the details, or the devil's in the details, kind of moments where it was like, geez, I didn't think that meant anything, and it means a whole lot. So 3.5 for me. I will be super interested to hear what you guys think of next week's episodes. And to fans out there too, I'm going to go ahead and we put it in the show's notes, but we would really love to hear your theories, your thoughts. So the email address for the show, I'm going to go ahead and give that out now too, it's mgttm podcast@gmail.com. And that will be in the notes because I've had a couple of really good conversations, but we'd really love to hear what you guys think. If you listen to the Basement Binge, which I recommend every single time Harrison's with us, it's a great show. He has a lot of interactions with people that listen to his show and get some really good feedback about what people think of episodes. And Harrison, I'll, kind of not to speak for you, but I think it's helped you a lot from the conversations that we've had, with future episodes and, things that, listeners engage in as well. So, send us an email, let us know what you think, and, mention some fans' theories on the show and, hopefully develop into some really good conversations. But that's going to do it for this episode. So I would like, Harrison, once again, just plug your show at the end here, and then we'll tell everybody where they can get these episodes.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to plug your email again. Send him an email. That's so fun. I've had rare interactions with listeners, but when I've put things out there to have people interact, and they have, it's like the most fun I've ever had while creating a podcast. And even with Matt, for the listeners, Matt reached out to me, and now we're great friends. And it's just a ton of fun to interact with people. And if you're wanting someone to talk about who enjoys WandaVision or movies or just film culture in general, Matt's a ton of fun to talk about. Obviously, you can hear us laughing and having a good time. So definitely email Matt because it's fun. It's a ton of fun. And everybody who I've been able to talk to, I know that they also enjoyed it. So it's mutually beneficial. But I appreciate you again having me here, Matt. Like he said, I'm Harrison from the Basement Binge. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can get the Basement Binge. Just search for that. Of course, it's on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Stitcher, all those places that you're used to, the Basement Binge. Yeah, thanks again for having me here, Matt. This has been tons of fun.
Yeah, no, we have a great time, and Rob, anybody that listens to the show know Rob has helped me with a ton of episodes. He's been a ton of fun, and even just to email the show to tell him how wrong he is about Joker, The Last Jedi,
yes.
Whatever you want to do there, I'm sure Rob would love to go over a couple of things as to why he doesn't like those movies, or honestly, Rob's a great person to talk to about varying opinions because it's never judgmental. As much as we joke here, it's super fun to debate with Rob on certain things because it's great back and forth. It's a lot of fun. And Rob, thank you so much. I hope I say this enough, but you've been a huge help with not just these episodes, but the show in general. And like Harrison said, it's been awesome just to connect over something super simple in a time when, guys, nothing seems to be simple in this world right now. It's awesome to be able to do this. And anybody that listens to this show, and I know Harrison has said this, anybody that listens to his show, it's awesome. We really, really appreciate it. Interact with us. Let us know what you think. And we'll look forward to next week with another episode of Mondays with Maximoff. Thanks again, listeners.